we're trying to get people into the game, and there are already people in your game that love the game. So you should fundamentally know, why do they love the game? What delights them about the game? Because I think some of those insights can unlock a lot of creative ideas that you can ultimately apply to your marketing campaigns with far more success.
Welcome to Mobile Growth and Pancakes, a podcast by StoreMaven. We break down how and why mobile apps grow. In each episode, we invite a mobile growth expert onto the show to break down a specific mobile growth strategy, how it worked, why it worked, and what they would do differently. I'm your host, Esther Shatz. All right, welcome to Mobile Growth and Pancakes. I am joined today by Tom Hammond, who's the CEO of UserWise. Tom, do you want to introduce yourself real quick and maybe talk a little bit about the platform UserWise and what you guys do?
Yeah, sure. I'm Tom Hammond. I've been in mobile gaming for about 10 years now, a lot doing monetization and stuff with a number of different games over the years. UserWise is a player experience management platform. We saw a lot of studios just building the same things over and over again. And most of the tools were really not great and really prone to breaking. And so we decided to kind of go out and gather all the different types of live ops tools that folks had made, put it together, actually put some design around it, and really make a great tool. So, kind of like we've seen Unity, you're not going to go out and build your own game engine anymore. We believe long-term folks can kind of fill that need for running their game once it's actually live with UserWise. So it's been kind of a fun journey, and getting a bunch of people kind of rolled on now as we've launched our early access product, which is super exciting, and excited to see where it goes from here.
Very exciting and very cool. I mean, let's go straight into, your focus is on audience and on giving users an experience that makes it worth sticking around. So let's talk a little bit about audience-driven game development as opposed to kind of starting on the product side. I think this is something that you know just a bit about.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think it even goes beyond games, and I am trying to remember where this came from. But it's this idea that if you want to start a company, the best way to do that is by first figuring out, who do you want your customers to be? Like, who are like my biggest, best, like these would be like the ideal customers that I want to work with. And then you go out and you actually talk to those people and you ask them, and there's like two basic questions. The first one is, let's say I want to work with mobile game studios focused on live ops. So I might say, what are 2 to 3 problems related to live ops that you're trying to solve in the next 12 months? And the second question is, if I had a magic wand and I could give you anything, what would you want? And after 5, 10, 20 conversations, there tends to be a trend in there, maybe a couple trends, but something overarching that you can then, if you can figure out how to build and actually solve whatever that problem is, you're much more likely to have a successful company. Now, think about that within the lens of games. So let's say I want to make a match 3 type game. So if I was going to do that right now, I would probably figure out, well, what need is not being met right now? What audience is out there that isn't being met? And so I would probably take a look at some of the top match 3 games, maybe like Homescapes and Candy Crush. And I would figure out, what is their ideal target audience, person look like? And then I would go and find people that fit that audience, but don't play those games. And I would start talking to them and asking them questions, trying to understand, like, have you ever tried a game like that? If you did try it, and many of them have, what about it didn't you like? Like, was there something that, turned you off about that game? Possibly I will find out that I really don't like the stress of the match 3. I only have like a certain number of moves, and I've got so much other stress in my life right now with work and kids and who knows, that it was just too much for me, and I had to quit. So maybe I hear that trend from a number of different people and I realize, hey, this is maybe worth a prototype, like putting together some sort of game that, it is like a match 3, but it takes away that stress of losing. So, there's many other things you have to figure out then from monetization and retention and things like that. But like, we're just pitching a prototype and finding something that could work.
Interesting. So you're starting, I mean, it sounds like you have some level of framework, right? You have to start within, this is around the app, there's something within this context is the app that I'm looking to develop. This is the audience, I'm looking to see who the natural audience group will be, but I'm actually specifically looking for the people who are dissatisfied or not maximized to their potential. How do I make sure that I'm designing something that answers their dissatisfaction, kind of solves this missing piece that's been existing without anyone knowing necessarily?
Exactly. And, oftentimes if you can solve that for like a peripheral audience, you'll probably steal some people from Candy Crush too, because there's players that are probably just dealing with this pain that caused other people to quit, but they're dealing with it and they just thought that it was like,
they just suck it up.
I just, I have to deal with it. An example of this, there is I forget who made it. It's called the Big Bertha, but it's related to golf. And so in golf, back before this was created, it's just a very small portion of the population of people that would actually play golf. And one of the reasons is it's very difficult to get into golf. Now, if you golf like me, you realize this because it's not exactly a pleasant experience to just go and make a complete fool of yourself by, sending the ball wherever. And it's very hard to hit the ball sometimes. And so what this company did is they talked to a lot of the people like, you should play golf. Like, why don't you? And a lot of it was like, it's just, too challenging, too hard to hit the ball. And they ended up creating this Big Bertha, like a really big club that made it a lot easier to hit the ball. And not only did they do spectacularly well with this group that they talked to, but a lot of the existing golfers also became customers of and buying Big Berthas because they lived with this pain, but they just took it on themselves of, oh, I just need to like figure out how to get better or whatnot. So it's a very interesting way of applying, a pain to a solution. That's not necessarily the only way to do audience-driven development. I'd say the other way that you can do it, and I don't know that one is better than the other. The second one might ultimately be better, but it also takes longer to do, which is this idea of picking, this is the audience that I want to do. Let's say fans of, I'm trying to remember the name of the game. It's goofy looking characters on my Switch. My daughter likes to play it.
Fortnite?
No,
not on your Switch. No.
Yeah, not on my Switch. Actually, they do have Fortnite on your Switch, but it doesn't matter.
Roblox? Is it Roblox?
Anyways, you pick a game. I haven't let them play Roblox yet. Not yet. It's like this little island game where you can go around and like build stuff. You can visit other people's islands and stuff. Cutesy looking characters. I would not have expected it to do so well. But target them. What aspect about, these types of games do people play? Or we could say like The Sims, that's a big audience. There's people that like The Sims, that kind of lifestyle simulator type game. So you could start targeting them. You could start putting together like a blog about The Sims or lifestyle, simulator games, putting out lots of content and starting to build a following of people that are interested in what you have to say, also interested in what you want to make. And over time, probably like 1 to 2 years, you'll end up kind of building up this group of people that will pretty much do whatever you say or follow you for because they really like the content and the stuff that like you are putting out. So, at some point you can start to talk to them, what do you really like about The Sims? Like, what don't you like about The Sims? If I was to put together a game doing XYZ or something that looks like this, are you interested in that? Chances are a lot of them would be, and then you now have this like audience that loves what you're trying to build, and they're going to be really active and give you great feedback and stuff. So you can start putting together a prototype and you could ask them for feedback, like play it, and they'll give it to you. And if they don't like it, like they're going to let you know, but they trust you. They know you. They like the things that you're doing. you like the same sorts of things, the same sort of games. They're on your side essentially. They're not just like a customer. They're going to stick with you pretty much whatever. So you're going to have multiple shots. Like you can, oh, I made a prototype. I did XYZ, didn't really work. Tried another one, took your feedback, here's something, and you have, this ongoing relationship with these people. And, there's probably a whole lot of other people that would also enjoy the game that just haven't, discovered you yet. But over time, you can have this like really amazing audience that you can just kind of work with collaboratively on building things. That's actually what we do with UserWise. We realized that there was just not a lot of great information on how to make mobile games, product-wise, how to do live ops, how to do, game economy design, all these things. A lot of games, the information was out there, but it was just really sheltered. And so we've just been trying to like make it more accessible. Along the way, people love our content. And a lot of them have collaborated with us on kind of building the product. Now, a lot of them are customers. And for all intents and purposes, we've become their live ops team. We're kind of building stuff with them. It's a really great, like, ongoing relationship that can apply to pretty much any sort of business. But it's a really, really awesome way to kind of partner with games. And I think a lot of people don't do that, mainly because it takes time.
No, I love it.
You gotta, put together the content. You gotta find those things, but like you can find the people on subreddits, like they're out there, and those tend to be like the most engaged users of, whatever style game that you're trying to make. And the fact that a game developer is like that close and that accessible to them, and they can have those interactions, it just makes it all the more better for them too. So it's great for them and it's great for you.
So, I love it because essentially what you're doing is you're giving value outside of a specific product, right? You have this continuous value stream, which is I'm providing information and a community and kind of this feed, which is independent of my ability to develop or provide you specifically with a product. And this means that when I'm in a position of wanting to offer a product, I have these partners who are with me because the value I give them is separate than the product. They're obviously going to be, on top of that with me. And it seems like the kind of thing that, even bigger developers, if you're I think some apps do it, you have Supercell, they've worked on their community and their content, and they can kind of build out other apps within that universe because they have such a life cycle outside. But I think a lot of developers don't touch that at all. They don't look outside of just this is the wiki for our game and this is the world for our game. And I'd say probably IPs have maybe accidentally gotten the benefit of that, right? Like they have this built-in kind of community that they can play around with. But I think it's a really cool idea to say, even if you're not an IP, you have an industry and you can provide value in that industry that creates just a long-term, constantly feeding into user base that lets you not only promote your games, but actually create your games and create them well. It's very cool.
Yeah. And, those users are probably much more likely to spend money on your game too. And, not just one game, but they'll probably play every game that you put out,
Yeah, you've done it for them.
You can have these long-term relationships. Yeah. And it's great for them too. I mean, you shouldn't do it, maliciously. Like you should genuinely enjoy the stuff that you're putting out and find it interesting and useful. And like, with UserWise, I don't care. Like someone could find tons and tons of value from all the stuff that we put out and make accessible and go on to make amazing games, never talk to us, never use anything. That is perfectly fine. That's great. We're going to all make better games together. I love that. But, some people might have a need for the things that we're doing, and we'll talk to them. And if it makes sense, we'll work with them. But if not, like, it doesn't really matter because we're doing good for the industry as a whole, I think. And, you're doing good for, sim lovers everywhere. Maybe you're sharing all sorts of interesting like tips and tricks and tidbits and things that, they had no idea about the Sims, but they love because it's their favorite game and it has been for years. So yeah, I think there's a lot of potential. I think it takes a while to build up that sort of base. So, I would say if I had a time constraint, I would probably start more on option one. But as I talk to those people, maybe I can leverage that into starting to build up a, community that I can, engage with and stuff too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's an investment for sure. It's not for the quick not for the quick wins, but for the the long-term payoff. I guess let's take it to the next step, right? So I have the prototype of my game. Whether I went through option 1 or 2, I've started to get the audience feedback. I see that I have a market fit. I see that there is something for me to move forward here. I think in the gaming industry, especially, there's a challenge, which is basically you need budget, right? You need paid, and kind of everybody's default is to basically say, I mean, look at hyper casual is basically just like this huge industry that's just get UA traffic, grow it out, build it in. Do you think that that's the only way to grow an app? What do you do if you're not looking for a kind of totally paid marketing strategy?
Yeah, so this has actually been something I've been thinking about a lot lately, and it was even just like, I don't know, I was kind of dumbstruck reading Facebook's recent publication on like the state of gaming or something. I forget exactly what it's called, but anyways, in there they outlined some surveys that they did, and I don't know what their methodology was or statistical relevance and such. But they found that only 1 in 4 people are willing to try a game that they haven't heard of before. Now, if you let that sink in, if I'm doing all this paid UA on Facebook for some new game, 3 out of 4 impressions are basically just wasted. That is a lot of wasted, revenue. Yeah, maybe my ROAS will accommodate for that if I'm lucky. But you're basically just throwing away money because these people haven't heard about your game. So what are some different ways that we could organically have people thinking about our game or hearing about our games or sharing it with our friends? I think I remember Flappy Bird coming out, and the way that I heard about Flappy Bird was from my brother-in-law, who was like, dude, you got to check this out. Like, I just want to watch you play. And I played, and it was embarrassing. I was atrocious, but I got really good after a while, mainly because I wanted to like show him. But, it was such a challenging experience that like I wanted to share that with friends and family. And I think I did. And he did that too. And so, if it comes down to seeing an ad for Genshin Impact, which a friend has passionately been like expounding about how amazing it is, or some other game that you haven't heard of before, well, of course, you're much more likely to try Genshin Impact than, this thing that you've never heard of before. Now, I think there's different ways that you can go about it. Like in some ways, you can think about how do I design my game such that there are social elements, because that's ultimately, I think, the answer to long-term retention. That's the only reason that I've ever stuck around with the game, beyond 30, 60 days or whatever. At some point it's like, oh, my guild relies on me. I've got to come in and, hang out with them, do my, whatever. But like, how can you make it social? How can you make the game more fun by sharing it with your friends, sharing it with your loved ones? Because then, they join in and the game is more fun. Among Us, great example of that. So, I think some of those things can be designed into your game. Sometimes you can have just like that challenge aspect where it's like, oh, this is so ridiculously hard. I want to see you fail or try to do better than this. There's a lot of things that you can do on those, game design things, but, you can't always do that in a game. So that might not necessarily be the answer. But I think there's a huge opportunity, again, getting towards like content marketing and different things that you could do on like social channels and stuff. Like when I think of, Facebook marketing for games, like for the most part, it's literally just paid advertising. People aren't utilizing their Facebook channels for hardly anything else. I think Wooga did this with like June's Journey, but they started doing like real life events and other things within their Facebook, and they just saw like massive growth come out of that. Because they were, thinking creatively. They were using their Facebook and engaging with real people in a way that like made them want to share that content, made them feel good about things. I think there's a whole lot that you can do beyond just paid advertising. I remember OBB with their frag game, they did like a thing with Nerf. So, co-marketing. And yeah, that sounds actually really fun. I enjoyed doing Nerf wars with my brothers when I grew up. Maybe I haven't checked out Frag, but I can go and like shoot Nerf guns at, a bunch of people. And maybe I'll get my brothers to join too. And we can, recreate our Nerf gun fights from when we were kids. Like, that's interesting. Like, that's share worthy. That's, getting on the growth hacking type stuff there. But like, I think you can get a lot more creative than a lot of people. Like, they just kind of fall into this strict paid UA trap, which, don't get me wrong, I think paid UA has a spot, and I think you always have to have it. But are there ways that you can fuel it and make it go further? Like, if I'm doing paid UA and 3 out of 4 impressions are basically being wasted right now, is there something that I can do within the social realm such that maybe 2 out of 4 now actually have heard about my, game before. And since they've heard about it, they're maybe more likely to actually download it and such. And that might not always be the case. I think certain ads will drive, better engagement and things. But I also think you have to be careful. Like, I'm going to talk about Playrix a little bit here. and this is a real life observation. I actually watched it happen and I was delighted, and it was super interesting. So I watched my wife, and she was playing, I think like 2 Dots or something. And she got an ad. And it was a fake ad for Homescapes or Gardenscapes. I forget which one. And she was like, oh, this seems interesting. And I'm just quietly watching her. And she downloads it. And like, she gets in, and oh man, she was so mad when she realized that that it was just like a fake ad and it was like a completely different game.
A mini game you'll see at some point after playing, match 3 for X amount of time. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So she downloaded it, and oh man, she uninstalled it, and she was just like furious. And I didn't really say anything. I just kind of kept watching. And then like a little bit later, there was another Playrix ad for something else. And she like saw that it was Playrix and just like instantly was like, get out of here. And I was like, what happened? And she's like, it was completely a lie. I don't know. I'm never downloading anything from Playrix again. Like, they're just, a bunch of scammers. And I was like, that's super interesting. I mean, I'm sure those ads work, because they wouldn't be running if they didn't, from like a strict ROAS perspective. But behind the scenes, I'm wondering, I was like, she's kind of your core target audience. Like, and she likes Dots and other match 3 games. So she probably would have liked the game. So, did you run some UA that ultimately drove her away when it could have done the opposite? Which actually kind of leads me to another thing that I've been thinking about recently, which is, okay, everyone in the industry is okay with retention rates being what they are, right? If you've got 40, 50%, D1 retention, you're kind of a hero. But think about that for a second. So I ran a bunch of ads on Facebook, and most people don't click those ads, right? So something about the ad, and not just the ad, they had to click the ad, go to the store, read the description, see the screenshots. They could have abandoned it there, but they didn't. And they downloaded it. So something about the ad was so enticing. It promised something about the store and this description. Like, we promised this experience to players, and we failed to deliver that so poorly that they just quit the game and they never came back. So why is that?
It's a much more depressing way of looking at it.
Right? Yeah, that's 60% of people that thought this game was going to be awesome and for me and looked really fun, they quit because it wasn't. So what exactly are we promising in our UA that we're failing to deliver in the game? Because I think if you can start to understand that a little bit closer and start to deliver those types of things in the game, or change your UA such that you're retaining those people a little bit longer. It might throw off your CPIs a little bit, but that's not ultimately the thing that really matters, in my opinion. It's more about like LTV and keeping those players around for the long term. So, if we can better understand those people, and I haven't necessarily figured out how to do this because it's very difficult to track down somebody that downloaded the game and then churned and go back to them. But, maybe that's something that Store Maven can do. If you can actually go back and talk to those people and understand, what did I fail to do in my game? Like, what wasn't wrong? Chances are there are some huge opportunities for you to uncover, glaring issues that your data isn't showing and your play tests aren't showing and different things like that. But we're drastically failing to deliver on the ultimate value that we're promising on. If you go to a store and you need a pan, you're going to see the pan in the store and it looks pretty good, seems to meet what you are expecting, and you bring that pan home and you try to cook with it, and for whatever reason it just like burns everything. Like it fails to deliver on what it's expected to do. We're going to be pissed about that. We're going to return that pan, get our money back. Like, what's going on here? Like, if a real life product failed to deliver on what it said it was going to do, we would not tolerate that type of thing. So why are we so readily tolerating that within paid UA? I don't know.
It's an interesting point. I mean, I think that part of, when you see a lot of companies default to paid just because there's such an easy measurement, right? Like you're looking at ROAS and you're looking at CPI, and these are areas that are just, you can create a target and you can stick to it or you can't. And then when you look at efforts like, especially when you're really getting creative, and I think some companies, Wooga's done it really well. Gameloft had a very cool kind of influencer tie-in where they got this weapon maker to make one of the weapons, which if you won a specific contest within the game, you would get to keep the actual weapon, something that was very, very tied into actually getting people to play the game who are interested, who are, really, really interesting things. But to prove the ROI on something like that and to kind of say, okay, this is the projected investment becomes so much harder that you have companies who just say, well, F it, we'll go with what we can tomorrow calculate. But, maybe in this sense, the obviously iOS 14.5 and kind of limiting the ability to measure the things we've been comfortable measuring until now, we've said it a couple times, but it kind of opens up that idea of, hey, measurement maybe isn't so straightforward. And maybe it's not just about getting the user in and having a 40% D7 retention. Maybe it's actually about taking it more holistically, taking it longer term. I think you had a good point as well, which is if we have 3 out of 4 people skipping a Facebook ad because they don't know the game, and then we have, some kind of effort that we've done through a social channel not related to paid, and suddenly we have 2 out of 4 people clicking, 3 out of 4 people clicking instead of ignoring. That's tangible. That's measurable. It's I think it is definitely something that you have to kind of bite the bullet and say, okay, I know I'm not going to be able to measure this tomorrow. I know it, but I've got to do something here. I can't just rely on the perfection of my gameplay. Like there has to be something to pull somebody in beforehand.
Well, and measuring and data is great, but if we're ultimately looking to create a game that you can play for 5, 10, 15 years for, hours and hours and hours, I generally find that the longer that a player has invested time and energy into the game, the more ready they become to spend money too. So, I might have a player that doesn't spend anything for a year. And so, by typical ROI, ROAS measuring standards, I would basically flag them as nothing. And then suddenly they might drop $20 on the game or, $5. I mean, I'm sure that's probably what League of Legends looks like in many cases. People don't buy a hero or a skin for a long time, and then they finally master a champion and suddenly they start buying a bunch of skins and things. So it's very interesting because, usually you see that LTV curve kind of flatten out up here. But if you have the retention where the players are sticking around for the long term, you have a lot of opportunities to continue to grow that ARPU curve, beyond just like that 30-day time frame or whatever that you're typically looking at. So it's an interesting thing to think about. But at the same time, if you're pouring millions of dollars into user acquisition, you do want to know that you're actually going to have positive return on investment. So I think it's a balance. And that's why I don't think that paid UA could or should go away. I think you want to have a baseline with that data as much as possible, but realize that there are these other activities that I think are difficult to necessarily track. But I will also say, a lot of times, I think if something's really working, you can kind of feel it in your gut, and you can just kind of tell it's working. So I don't know.
I guess the question is, and I definitely relate to the point. What about when you're the developer who doesn't have a huge amount of time to see payoff? You're maybe smaller shop and you've invested a whole lot in getting a game live, especially if you've done all the right work beforehand and you've really found that you have something that should be market fit. How do you look to make sure that you're getting? You need ROI as soon as possible. But you can't throw a ton into UA and just wait for it to pay off next year. But you also can't throw a ton into a long-term organic game. Is there a way to speed the process up to hit that immediate hurdle sooner rather than later?
That's a great point. I feel like it's going to be very case by case basis. It's going to depend a lot on your game and the potential and your metrics for, monetization and retention and things like that. I mean, truthfully, if I was starting a new studio today without the resources that I have, I would probably take the approach of starting simpler. I would probably try to find, assuming I don't bring my existing co-founders, which I probably would, but if I was starting brand new and I had no access to anything, I would probably look for someone that is a generalist artist, but also, skilled at doing marketing type stuff. I would look for generalist, probably technologist, unless I want to start coding again. It's been a while, but I'm sure I could get back on it. But usually I like those teams of three. And so I probably transition between the two of like doing marketing, coding, game design type stuff. But I would probably say we start with hyper casual games. I don't think I would use a publisher. I would probably self-publish because I think the more you can have those types of things in-house, the faster you learn, the better you get at all sorts of things. Some people don't have that opportunity, but I think if you can, it can be really, really valuable. Depends. Maybe you publish like one or two and then you start doing some self-publishing or whatnot. But the reason I would start hyper casual is, if you can make a game prototype every 2 weeks that is 26 shots on goal versus like a longer game that maybe you get like 1 or 2 shots on goal, throughout the year. So I would start there. And ideally I would get to the point where we've got 5 to 10 games that aren't huge. I would target probably like $5,000 to $10,000 a month in, just recurring revenue. And I would probably do it all paid UA. So just get to the point of ROAS positive, paid UA, not looking to take over the moon. But once you have that baseline of the like 5 to 10 games, you've got a lot more security, enough that you can pay your salaries, bring on a few more employees, probably continue with that 26 hyper casual. But now maybe I would take a larger shot on goal with something that I spend a little bit more time doing that research of like the people that don't play Candy Crush or Homescapes. Like, why not? Can we iterate on that and have a go, depending on where I want to be. Maybe we achieve something, maybe we don't. But worst case, that game fails. We still have that baseline to, continue to run, and then we can take another shot on goal. So it's a much longer, but in my mind, safer approach because, I don't believe you should just build a company to try to scale it up and sell it as quickly as possible. I believe in, long-term things that ultimately can provide value for the world as a whole. So you're not going to do anything really quick, but you start slow so that you can go quick in the long term. And eventually, maybe we'll solve that problem for the people that don't play Candy Crush and Homescapes, and it could become, a huge game. And as it starts to become a huge game, that's where I would start to kick in the more creative type things of, okay, we've got some baseline, some cash. Maybe we can bring on like a creative content marketer or someone that can really do these outside of the box type things so that we can figure out how do we address more of these people that we think would be a great fit for our game, that we can actually tell them about it and get them to try the game and do that in a, honest way that builds trust. Because I believe, yeah.
It's funny, I think, because you're sort of seeing that practically nowadays on both sides. I think a lot of hyper casual studios have started to look at, okay, where's our game that actually lasts, that actually has a player base. And, on the other side, you have, monster developers who have those games that really have those audience networks who are also now saying, okay, let me bring in a hyper casual just to kind of have this feed coming in that enables me to go longer term on. So, I think it makes a lot of sense kind of on both sides. Tom, you ready for the quick fire round?
Go for it.
All right. You can give just one tip to an aspiring mobile growth marketer. What's the tip?
I would probably say spend more time talking to engaged players. I think right now, marketers spend too much time just focused on the data and the marketing campaigns and things like that. But ultimately, we're trying to get people into the game. And there are already people in your game that love the game. So you should fundamentally know, why do they, love the game? Like what delights them about the game? Because I think some of those insights can unlock a lot of creative ideas that you can ultimately apply to your marketing campaigns with far more success.
Awesome. Your favorite mobile growth resource?
That is a tough question that I was not prepared to answer. I don't know.
We don't call it quick fire for nothing.
Yeah, I think I really liked companies like Store Maven, Geek Lab, some others like that. I think you guys have a lot of great resources. And then like Game Refinery and Enlight.io is a new one. Those types of things are really helpful.
Awesome. Person in the industry that you'd most want to take for lunch and why?
Probably Joachim Akren, the founder of Elite Game Developers. I just really love his mission and what he's doing. He's empowering kind of the next generation of game entrepreneurs and helping them start their businesses the right way. And I really love seeing that.
I think you've answered that faster than anyone else up till now. You really knew who you were ready. That was good. Okay, most important question. What is your favorite type of pancake?
So I'm kind of a sucker for fruit in anything. So I would probably say like a blueberry pancake. Yeah.
I can't do this question pregnant because then I need to immediately. Now I'm just like, I need a blueberry pancake now. This is not an effective way to end the question. Okay. Finally, Tom, where can people find you, hear more, see what you're up to, hear more thoughts?
Yeah, well, you can always find us at userwise.io. We also have a private community for, game creators. So if you guys want to join that, feel free to apply. We'd love to continue to grow that. But as for me, I'm on LinkedIn a lot. So you can just do Tom Hammond or look for UserWise. You'll probably find me. Connect, shoot me a message. I love helping people out with all sorts of crazy fun questions. So yeah, if you need help, I usually keep time on my calendar to help game creators make better games.
Amazing, Tom. Thank you so much for joining, for all the info, and Yeah, really excited to see UserWise over the next few months and see how you guys grow.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast.
And that was Mobile Growth and Pancakes. To find out more about StoreMaven and how we can improve App Store performance, visit storemaven.com. And then make sure to search for Mobile Growth and Pancakes in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found, and click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at StoreMaven, thanks for listening.